Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Casper here. Today I'm so excited for what I'm about to show you guys. It's a new gambit, something that I believe you have never seen with your own eyeballs before. So you start with pawn to f4, the bird opening, and it's not going to be the same stuff that you already know in the bird. Now see, the top played move that most of your opponents are going to play is d5. Pawn to d5 is also the top played move in the Masters database, as you can see, and it makes sense because obviously black can't play pawn to e5 due to our bird move pawn to f4, and that's what you want your opponents to do. After this, it is high time for you to play pawn to c4, transposing into one weird gambit called the Sturm Gambit. I believe that's a German language. And if you check the Masters database, you can see the top played move is pawn to d4, which is the main area of my meat. But first, let's quickly look at what happens if black takes before we discuss the move pawn to d4. So once you see this move d takes c4, which Stockfish doesn't even like from black's side, you simply go pawn to e3, not pawn to e4, and you will see the reason why. Pawn to e3 is more stable, also not allowing queen b6 check in the near future. Anyway, and this kind of creates an impression as if we want to take this pawn immediately, which is why you will see most of your opponents defending it with b5. And now this is when you launch your minority attack, remembering everything that you do in the queen's gambit accepted. If a7 you just take, they can't take back because you're going to win their free rook on a8. So they mostly play c6, after which you take that b5 pawn, and should they take back with their c pawn, well and good for you, because now you are going to win a free piece, either the knight, the rook, or the bishop, and life will go on from there. Anyway, after pawn to e3, b5, and pawn to a4, if they don't play c6, say this time black plays bishop d7 in advance, preparing for queen f3, again you can just take. That's just a free pawn. You are intending to go knight c3 next. If they ever take on b5 with their bishop, you still go knight c3, attacking the bishop, and here you might see them playing bishop c6, preventing you from playing queen f3. Well, now you can go knight f3, and you're just one move away from taking that pawn, which black can't even defend well. For example, even if they choose to give up the bishop in a way of defending, well, first you can just go ahead and take, that's fine, and after bishop takes you have queen a4 check, and then you're going to take that. But even more stronger is pawn to e4. They can't do this, you have this. If bishop c6 again, you just take, you just way ahead in development. Say pawn to e6, you even go pawn to f5, trying to damage black's pawn structure on the king side. Say ef, you go queen f3, that's the main problem. Say knight h6, trying to defend, you go pawn to d4, supported by your knight, and you just want to take this other knight. If pawn takes, for example, you take that knight, and if pawn takes, you have a mate in 2, beginning with bishop takes check, and whatever black does, say this, you just checkmate them on a6. Anyway, after d5, c4, pawn takes, just remember to go e3, not pawn to e4, even though that's fine, but you just want to have this opportunity to win a piece. You're not going to see most of your advanced opponents playing pawn to b5 anyways. In this position, they might play e5, kind of the reverse downturn, but the best you can do here is just to take on e5, oversimplifying the game. After all, that was just a free pawn for the time being. They'll play knight c6, trying to get back their pawn. And now you go knight f3, defending it. If bishop g4, pinning your knight to the queen so that they take freely on e5. You can simply play bishop e2 in this position, or sometimes you can even take. I mean, this is another one little trick you can consider. After knight takes e5, for example, even though you don't have knight takes and checkmate, you can just go queen b3, attack this pawn and the f7 pawn. If they do that, you take back, and here you're just good. Bishop takes, for example, just helps you, organize things. In the near future, you are going to castle long and start attacking on this side of the board, or sometimes you can even castle short and put your king on h1. But after bishop g4, you don't really have to take on c4 anyways and allow this to happen. You just go bishop e2, so that if black takes on e5, you take that free knight. So in most cases, they are going to start with bishop takes f3, after which you take back with your bishop, not with your fingers. And once again, should they play knight takes e5, you always have bishop takes b7. Remember that Catalan bishop or that English bishop rook b8, you go queen a4 check, and after queen d7, it's up to you to exchange queens or just take on a7, continue playing an imbalanced game. Stockfish suggests that black should play pawn to d4, which is what we want to see. Now wait a second, you guys, this is becoming so interesting. Is this not the reverse Majana formation that I was showing you guys last week with black pieces? Let's see. Remember that the Majana formation happens after white plays d4, then you go c5, the old Benoni, and after they play d5, the top played move. This is when you play pawn to f5. Look at you! This is the same stuff that we're looking at now with white pieces. And if you remember what I said in my Majana formation is, you better finish your kingside development as quickly as you can before playing pawn to d6. And on the queen side, we'll play something like knight a6, put the knight on c7 later on, then a6 and b5. In this case, pawn to c4 is our major pawn break somewhere in the middle game. And sometimes instead of putting your queen's knight on c7, I said you can also play knight bd7, in which case your queen will sit on a5, b6 or c7 later in the middle game, then go a6, b5 and all that stuff. And that's what we're going to be doing even in white, but there will be some slight changes obviously, so stay tuned and don't skip. So again, we are going to try and be quick in development on the king side, beginning with the move knight f3 in this position. Well, why not pawn to d3? Maybe black will have time to play pawn to e5, kind of the reverse Sturm Gambit, and it's going to be bad for your eyeballs, which is why you always want to prevent that given a chance with the move knight f3. Surprisingly enough, this has also been played at the top level. In the Masters database, you can check pawn to c5 is the top played move. Sometimes they can also play knight c6. Not to mention that even in the Leech's database, c5 is the top played move in this position, just trying to hold on to their pawn. And now this is when you can play pawn to d3 if you don't mind, since black doesn't have e5. But you see, sticking to our Majana formation plan, let's just be quick on the king side by playing g3. Sticking to what we know, right? By this time, your opponent to play knight c6, trying to mirror you. Now you go bishop g2. Now say what happens if black plays pawn to d3, trying to disturb the position? Well, at best you can just cast a shot or go pawn to b3. And at worst, you have knight c3. The rule of thumb is not just to take on d3 just yet, because you're going to activate your opponent's queen. So in this position, you can just go knight c3, for example. If pawn takes, you're going to take back with your knight. If bishop f5, you have e4 anyways. It's not a bad move. And you're going to pick up that pawn in no time after playing moves like bishop f1, knight d5, and queen b3. If knight f6, you can just play cast short or pawn to b3, e.g. b3. Anything is playable. That's the beauty of the Majana formation. Say g6, they want to flank their bishop to hit your rook. You go bishop b2, bishop g7, knight a4 looks attractive and reasonable, attacking this pawn and also paving way for the bishop. If something like b6, now you reveal your plan of knight e5. Look at this knight and this rook. Your last squad bishop is eyeing both, so it will be hardly easy for black to defend this position. In fact, the best they can do here is to give up their rook, after which you don't even have to take immediately. You first go f takes e5, attacking the knight, and things are bad. Black is going to lose a piece in this position. So you see, this move pawn to d3 is a sheer waste of time, and my advice is don't just do anything about it. Play moves like knight c3, pawn to b3, and bishop b2. The position will sort itself out. Don't pay attention to e takes d3. Anyway, once again, after d4, just play knight f3. And after c5, with white pieces, it is okay to go pawn to d3 before playing g3. There are not any threats. But if you want to stick to your Majana stuff, just finish your kingside development first before focusing on the center. Now, in this position, you're going to see most of your opponents playing something like g6 or knight f6, which is more logical than this unnatural pawn to d3 move. Now that your kingside development is complete, this is when you can consider playing pawn to d3, following what you do in a Majana formation. And in this position, they will play something like g6. Like always, you guys listen, you will note that 90% of the times when you play pawn to g3, your opponents will intuitionally consider playing g6 as well. They want to copy you. They want to fianchetto their kingside. This is what people do. Besides, it's pointless for them to play e6 because after developing their dark squad bishop, they won't be attacking anything on this side of the board, which is why they always play pawn to g6. Hear me out, you guys. You will appreciate these teachings later. After this move, you can just go ahead and castle short, and then after bishop g7, how do you continue from here? Remember our Mojana formation game plan, you guys. Two of them actually. You can go knight bd2 if you want, followed by a3, rook b1, pawn to b4, and that stuff. Or sometimes you consider moves like h3, queen c2, or queen e1. That's all great. If you get stuck somewhere in the middle game, you can also consider the move knight e5, so that if knight takes, you take back with your pawn. In this line, your light squad bishop will have more control along that diagonal. The second plan is where you just put your queen's knight on c2 instead of playing knight d2. I also love this. In fact, in this position, Stockfish recommends you go knight a3, because sometimes you can also plant your knight on b5. Say black castles short, and now you consider playing knight c2. Say black plays rook e8 in this position. The whole point of playing knight c2, ladies and gentlemen, is to push pawn to b4. And this kind of looks like we're just sacrificing a pawn for nothing, but the whole idea is to go rook b1. So this is like an early pawn advance. If they play pawn to a5, you simply launch this minority attack a3. You just want to take, so they have to take, and now you take back with your bishop, playing active chess. Remember, it's not about how many pieces you have, it's about how many active pieces you have. And if you take a close look at this position, you will note that black can't do anything on the queen side. His position is cramped. They can't move their knight because we're going to take. They can't move their pawn because we have knight e5 once again. So you will see them making moves like knight g4 in this position, maybe intending to plant their knight on e3. Here you can just go h3 and invite them to do this, because at the end of the day, the e pawn on the e3 square will be your shield, your defender. Or if you want to take it right away, you can consider playing something like queen c1 in this position. You just want to take. They don't have this, you have this. Question: why would you even consider playing the Sturm Gambit? Well, I wouldn't mind playing this opening against a higher rated opponent in a real OTB tournament, or against someone like Magnus Carlsen or Hikaru. And the thing is very simple. I just want to play chess. These are openings that you play if you want to run away from modern theory that most of these elites seem to know well. In fact, in one of the old interviews, Magnus Carlsen was asked what opening he would play against an alien, and his answer was the English opening, and sometimes combined with the Zucatot and the Reti openings. And the reason why he gave that answer was, at least with the English opening that involves the move pawn to c4 and knight f3, you intend to play slow chess and avoid tons of theories that your opponents may know well. You just want to play slow chess and die in the end game. And that's what we are doing with this reverse Mojana formation. Once again, you go knight f3 in this position to avoid e5, the reverse downturn, and after pawn to c5, instead of g3, you can also play pawn to d3 right away. And after knight c6, Stockfish suggests that you should play the move pawn to e4, turning this into some kind of the reverse check Benoni, but I'm not a fan of this. Once again, I advise just fianchettoing your light squad bishop. After something like knight f6, you go bishop g2 and castle short. Sometimes after you play pawn to g3, your opponents may play bishop g4, but once again you can just go bishop g2 so that you don't mess up your king side. Anyway, knight f6, you play bishop g2, and after g6, again you castle short. Just playing safe chess to avoid tons of theories, right? At worst, you just want to fight in the endgame. Bishop g7, and again you consider playing knight a3 and knight c2. How about knight d2? This is also fine if black castles short. The other idea of playing knight d2 is to put that knight on b3. In this particular position, I can also play knight e4. Why? Because after knight takes, I'm glad to take back with my e pawn, which cannot be attacked anytime soon, and I'm ready to go e5 next. Not to mention, black cannot push the d pawn further because of this. What if they play e5 themselves? Well, I can just play f5, and I'll be happy to see this trade, because at worst, I just forced black to mess up his pawn structure on the king side. So this is strategic chess at the end of the day, you guys. The intention once again is to play safe and solid chess while avoiding tons of theory. Here I would take on f5 because what else do I know? After bishop takes, there is always this hidden tactical shot to remember: knight takes e5, because now not only are we spying on this pawn, we are also hitting on the light squared bishop. So once again, these are openings that you want to play if you don't know much about your opponents, or if you are playing a very higher rated opponent who seem to know a lot of theory than you do. Before I end this video, let's look at some of the ways in which your opponents may try to decline your Sturm Gambit, also known as the reverse Morgana formation. Sometimes you won't see them advancing their pawn or taking on c4. They will play other useless moves like pawn to c, after which you can give them one more chance to advance their pawn so that you play what you know. You play knight f3 in this position. Again, if they are not taking, that's a sign. You will see them playing something like knight to f6 in this position. These are moments where you want to play active chess. They seem not to be interested in taking or advancing their pawn, but if you play the move pawn to g3, the game will become complicated after they take the c pawn, even though that's not a big thing. So you better just switch your plan to e3 instead of playing pawn to d3, so that if they take, you take back immediately. And this is kind of the King's Indian attack if you think about it. If they play bishop g4 pinning your knight, to hold on to your pawn, you can even play pawn to b3, say pawn to e6, kind of the Caro-Kann pawn structure. With the bishop out, you play bishop b2, say bishop e7, you go bishop e2, castle short, and now you consider going knight e5. Sometimes they might play knight bd7. You first go knight c3, completing your piece development. You will put your queen on c2, play h3, take, connect your rooks. These are things that champions play in real OTB tournaments. Right, this is all for today. I'm going to be trying out this on leeches against real opponents, so don't miss any of my future uploads. Subscribe and turn on the bell notification icon. Great.